Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Brian Mansell Show. As always, I'm your host, Brian Mansell, and I'm just going to cut right to the chase. Week 1, storylines, and then ultimately the game predictions. We're doing it all from Sunday to Monday. Now, of course, this is coming out after the Cowboys have lost to the Eagles and the Chiefs being upset by the Chargers, so we won't cover those two games. But we will open up by talking about Pittsburgh and the Jets. But before we do that, make sure you guys have liked and subscribed. And make sure to share this content out with all your friends, so this way we can help to make the channel grow, and then we can do more amazing content for you guys, not just football, in the future. Now, first off, with Pittsburgh and the Jets. When we look at Pittsburgh, the main things we have to know about this game is that Cam Hayward was having his contract dispute, but as of Saturday night, he is officially clear. They got everything figured out with his contract situation. He's playing on Sunday against the Jets. Very important to know he's going to play. Can't say the same for the rookie defensive tackle that's supposed to be working alongside him, Derek Harmon. He's out with a knee injury, so they'll have somebody else playing in his position. Now, going into this game, you guys know there's been a massive shuffling. DK Metcalf is now the lead receiver for Pittsburgh. Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. I mean, the main storyline in this game is Rodgers is returning to the team he was with last year in New Jersey, the New York Jets. So he's going back there. And now, in this case, we have to ask one question, and I'm going to ask a question for every team. For Pittsburgh, in this case, what can their offense do to beat the Jets' defense? We already know you guys have questions about the Jets' offense not being very strong. That's one thing. I get that, because we didn't like what we saw in the preseason. A lot of people have doubts about Justin Fields, Breece Hall's capabilities as the lead back. So I understand a lot of the sentiment there, but there's no denying this defense is still very strong and a super tough beat for most teams. And the Steelers' offense, we haven't seen them really work together as a unit yet. This first time we're seeing it on the field, all the starters together, including Rodgers. So this will be the first test for the Pittsburgh Steelers to see, does this offense have what it takes to handle tough defenses? And if DK Metcalf can get involved, if he's getting good passes, he's handling Sauce Gardner well, if they can get the run game going with Jaylen Warren and their rookie Caleb Johnson from Iowa, maybe, just maybe, this Pittsburgh offense could be better than advertised, and that would mean the Jets would lose this game. Now, on the flip side, as we're speaking about the Jets here, they're led with the new head coach, and this head coach is the former defensive coordinator for the Lions, Aaron Glenn, first-time head coach in the NFL. AVT tore his tricep recently, so he is done for the year, and they've had to shuffle the offensive line as a result. Joe Tippmann, who's usually the starting center for the Jets, is now going to be playing at that spot that is empty where AVT was playing. And in turn, the Jets are also going to have Josh Myers take over as the center, who there's been questions about how he played back in his days in Seattle, but we don't know what he looks like with the Jets, so it could be completely different. The number one story here, the number one question everybody's asking, can Justin Fields open up the passing game against a veteran secondary in Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh secondary is completely revamped with veterans, a lot of older guys who were very good at one point, maybe not the same kind of player they were 5 years ago, maybe a step behind, maybe a little slower on the reactions. Can Justin Fields exploit that? And the only way he can exploit that is through the passing game. The run game, teams are going to be game plan for it. They're going to game plan for you to run a lot. If you, as a quarterback, can defy the odds and make some incredible passes, Pittsburgh is not going to know how to handle that. And they were not going to be able to game plan correctly for that, and now they have to adjust everything, and it gives the Jets an immediate advantage. If they can get the pass game going and there's really good connection with Fields and Garrett Wilson, this could be a very different game for Pittsburgh. This could also end up becoming a high-scoring affair. In the end, I'm taking Pittsburgh to beat the Jets. I think Rodgers is set for the revenge game, and that's that. The New York Giants are in Washington playing the Commanders to open the season. That's the in-division rivalry. If you're watching this on YouTube and you're getting ready to watch the Twitch stream soon, guess what? That's the first game of the night for me to be streaming. So on Twitch, at the Brian Mansell Show, for the marathon stream, we are opening with the Giants at the Commanders, 1:05 Eastern Time. Make sure you guys are tuned in for that to watch the full live reactions and play-by-play. Trust me, it's amazing. If you haven't already, go check it out while you're watching this video. Let's start with the Giants here, and this is the main storyline of the whole game. This is Russell Wilson's debut with Big Blue. And we don't know what version of Wilson we're getting. That's very much up in the air. Somebody who they need to be healthy right now is not going to be playing in week 1, and that is going to be Andrew Thomas. They listed him as doubtful, but I think they're going to rule him out. He has some kind of injury. I think it's his foot. His foot's bothering him. He's unlikely to play. And also, the top target for the Giants on the offense, Malik Neighbors, he's playing, but he's not 100% healthy. He's got some back tightness. He was battling a turf toe issue earlier. They got to be very easy with Neighbors, so keep an eye on that. And the main question for the Giants as they face the Commanders, because we're looking at the team that was in the NFC Championship last year in the Washington Commanders. The main question we have is how can the Giants secondary, which is similar to last year, how can they hold Terry McLaurin and new commander Deebo Samuel from creating big plays downfield? And as we ask this question, we have to really look at the secondary and say, is there anybody who knows how to seal the top and make sure nobody flies past them? I think Tyler Nubin has a really good ability to do that, and the addition of Javon Holland definitely seals the deal there. So their safeties are fine. It's more about the corners. The safety help is what they're going to need, because I don't know if the corners can handle these two in man-to-man situations. Debo's a speedster. McLaurin is a route technician. We all know that. So it's hard to really sit there and be like, well, they're going to get washed. But I think it's safe to say that they're going to get beat a few times. Let's flip over to Washington, who is home for this game. Jaden Daniels, you all know, he's coming off his Offensive Rookie of the Year campaign, had a monster year last year, one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch. And the question now is just the sophomore campaign. Can he do it again? Or is he going to slump like some guys have recently, like C.J. Stroud? Is he going to have that sophomore slump and have to bounce back afterwards? We don't know. That's a huge question going into this, despite the fact they've done a good job in tooling the offense for Daniel's benefit. What I mean by that, they've revamped the offensive line. They've got Laramie Tunsil now playing left tackle. They've also added Josh Connerly Jr. in the draft, the former Oregon tackle. He's going to be playing the right tackle. And I also want to add in that their defensive side, they've added a couple new players in their front seven. Javin Kinlaw, who was a former 49er and Jet, he's now going to play defensive tackle along and on the edges. You're going to have Dietrich Wise Jr., the former Patriot, is now with them. And Von Miller, the future Hall of Famer, is now with them. He's going to be playing off the edge. So we'll see, honestly, where this goes. They got a lot of veteran options here in this front seven. They're definitely aiming to get more pressure, be more successful at getting pressure off the edge, especially after losing Dante Fowler this offseason. So they're just trying to replicate that same amount of pressure, the amount of sacks they got last year. They're trying to get back to that or do better. That's their objective. Which now leads into the question, staying on the whole topic of pass pressures and everything. With Washington's O-line being reshaped here, could Washington's O-line keep away the Giants' aggressive and imposing pass rush that's led by Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and their first-round pick, Abdul Carter? That's the real test in this game. And if the Giants are able to break through and get a lot of pressure on Jaden, force him to make some bad throws, this could become a very different game very quickly. I think in the end it's going to be close, but Washington comes out on top. That's a very safe thing for me to say. Let's go to Cleveland and talk about Cincinnati and Cleveland in an AFC North rivalry matchup. This is Flacco's return to Cleveland in hopes that he can salvage this season for the Browns. We all know that Watson had a setback in his recovery. He's out for the year now, or for at least most of the year. They don't have many very good options in the backup, and I already know the Shedeur people are going to be talking in my ear, but they did add Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, and they're going to stay on the bench for now. Flacco is the starter. He's the veteran option. I think he's about 40 years old now, so this could be his last year, much like Rodgers. But before we get there, before we focus on Cleveland, I want to flip over to Cincinnati first because they're the road team. They got a new look on this offensive line. They drafted Dylan Fairchild, so they got a brand new guard in on the left side, and then they added Lucas Patrick, the former Green Bay Packer, on the right side. So they've reworked their offensive line to make sure their interior linemen are strong. And it was a very good investment because that was absolutely something they needed. I 100% believe that. But what I also believe is that this defense is going to look a little different. Secondary may be a little shaky, which will be involved in my question soon. But the rookie opportunities now. They did get a couple rookies on defense. And that would be Demetrius Knight Jr., the linebacker from South Carolina. He's going to be starting. And then they're also going to get reps in for Shamar Stewart, who is their defensive lineman who, if you guys don't remember this offseason, they were having a contract dispute with him, and they finally got it settled. And he came and showed up training camp. He looked great. He's going to start, I believe, as a rotational guy, but he will eventually take over as a starter at some point. So we're going to see both these guys get a lot of reps, and what they do really does dictate how the Cincinnati defense will look as a whole, at least in the front seven. Because obviously Hendrickson's great, but these two other guys are huge pieces to how good the defense can be up front, especially in catching with the spy sets and everything. That's very important. Can the Bengals secondary take this next step forward this year and lock down the deep zones? One thing we were afraid of, and we saw a lot last year at Cincinnati, is as great as this offense is, the defense lets them down quite often. And it happens in the secondary most of the time. And it's unfortunate to say that because they do have some really good talent there, but for some reason, these offensive coordinators game plan well. The quarterbacks are recognizing their schemes, and they're jumping and they're making great adjustments, and they're just blowing it up every time. They have to make sure they seal off their deep zones. Whatever adjustments they got to do, they got to make it so guys like Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman don't blow by them, or Jamari Thrash, who's now getting a starting opportunity there. Shout out to Louisville. So he's going to be... So that's really the main objective here. They have to find a way to seal off the deep zones and make sure nothing blows by, even with the corners. If you got to have your corners play deep zone and make sure everything stays in front, do that, because you have options there to break free from it. It's there. You can do that. So, I mean, and you're going to have plenty of insurance with your linebackers. So as long as you keep everything underneath and in front of you, they would be better off. They got to incorporate more of that. And if they do, it could be a huge benefit to them, especially against a team like Cleveland. On Cleveland's side, going to this game, they have a lot of injuries. I called it sizable. It's a lot. It's a lot of injuries. They're all going to play for the most part. But the most important story to know, Quinshon Judkins, he signed his contract. He's going to play for the Browns. He's not playing this weekend. He's got to ramp up. So Jerome Ford and the rookie Dylan Sampson are going to take over the backfield. If you guys don't know, Nick Chubb is no longer a Brown. He's with the Texans now. So they got a whole new look in the backfield. One of the things they overlook is the wide receiver room, as you heard me mention. Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, Jamari Thrash. They also now have Isaiah Bond, who's supposed to be a star in the making coming out of Texas. So he'll probably get some attention as well and get incorporated in the offense a little bit of time. But it's a really underrated group that could do a lot more damage than meets the eye. And don't forget, still have David Njoku. They are making a lot more rookie debuts, and especially on the defensive side. The main names, Mason Graham, their first-round pick, the defensive tackle, he's playing. And then you also got Carson Swessinger, the linebacker from UCLA. He had a really good Senior Bowl performance back in January, and it helped him get a higher draft stock. Ended up getting picked by the Browns earlier than anticipated. And now here he is starting for them at the linebacker spot. So both teams running with a defensive lineman and a linebacker rookie. They're both filling in those spots. But Cleveland's question is, with those new starters on defense, right? Can they generate enough pressure to slow down the Cincinnati offense? I know it sounds like an impossible task, but it's a serious question to consider. Can they do it? If they do it, hoorah. They do it. They like, it's amazing, but it may not happen. I mean, we're asking basically, can you find a way to roll a boulder in front of this tunnel? And I'm talking like a train tunnel. Like, great, you threw the boulder in. It looks like it's blocking the way. But in the end, the train's going high speed and just going to run through it and break it into a million pieces, and you've done nothing. You just wasted your time. I know it seems like that to a lot of people. But I think for Cleveland, there is some kind of strategy definitely there, and the defensive coordinator knows it, and he's going to have to game plan in some kind of way to make sure that Chase and Higgins do not blow them up. If you let Chase get by you in even the slightest, you have lost. If I were them, I would make sure they keep him to the sidelines. Do not let him break across the middle. Anything across the middle is free game, and with his ability to accelerate and hit into a second gear, it's a lot of problems and not a lot of answers. So they need to be sure that they keep him to the sidelines. In the end, this game is going to go into Cincinnati's favor. Like I said, it's an impossible task. Not many teams can do it, and I don't think Cleveland's going to be the team that starts off by getting that big stop on Cincinnati. Even though Cincinnati has lost each of their last 3 season openers. Even though that's the case, I'm not going to take it here. I'm not going to bite. I do think Cincinnati breaks that streak. Let's go into the next game here. That next game being the Miami Dolphins and the Indianapolis Colts. Also 1 o'clock game. The main story, Daniel Jones is in a new chapter now, has started a new chapter in Indianapolis. You got a new secondary now with Charvarius Ward at corner, Cam Bynum, Xavier Howard. They're looking good in the secondary. They've done a great job building that together and making it into something that could really be superimposing in a division where they kind of need to start stepping it up more to compete against Houston. This is a really good way to do it. They pursued well in free agency. They set up well. And now this secondary has a great chance to be something special, potentially a top 10 pass defense here, if all goes well. Also worth noting, Daniel Jones is the quarterback. And on the offensive side of the ball, there isn't too many changes. The only major change I can really point out for them is they drafted Tyler Warren. They got a brand new tight end who's a really good blocker, and he's an excellent receiving threat. So now you got another threat next to Pittman Jr., next to Josh Downs, next to Alec Pierce. It looks great. And also don't forget Ad Mitchell. And they still got Jonathan Taylor. This offense could be really good. And the Colts have a really great offensive line, which is something Daniel Jones was never really used to in his time in the NFL. So maybe this could wake him up and he could really play well against Miami and take a leap forward here. But we're asking a lot. So this leads to the question. With an offense designed to be destructive on vertical plays, can Jones put his past demons to rest to conquer Miami? Well, let's look at Miami. They don't have Darren Waller. He did not ramp up well. He had a setback, and now he's going to be out this week. The return of Bradley Chubb, who has been out for the last year and a half, I believe, with a season-ending injury that he had. I think it was to his ACL and meniscus area. So I think he shredded up his knee or ankle, one or the other. But he was out for a while. It was pretty ugly. He didn't play all last season. He's back finally. We know what he was able to do when he was healthy. Let's see if he can bring it back again. And they got a brand new secondary led by Jack Jones and Storm Duck at corner. And then in the safety spot, Ashton Davis. And the return of a former Dolphin, Minkah Fitzpatrick. So let's ask the question now with the Dolphins. How will the Dolphins find their way to the pocket and increase their pressures and sacks after finishing in the bottom half in both categories last season? They struggled a lot trying to get pressure, trying to get sacks last season. They weren't very good at it. But with the addition of Bradley Chubb, does that change things? Can they get more impactful? Can they get at least to middle of the road, like around 17, 16, 15? Can they get into that range? Because even that little addition and contribution there, that little boost, could be enough to win them a couple extra games. So that's a very important thing to watch for them, not only this game, but throughout the season. Can they get better in that category where they struggled last year the most? I think they will. And I think it's going to be a lot of Danny kind of still trying to get rid of old habits. And that leads to Miami end up winning this game because of a couple mistakes he makes that he would have made with the Giants, but he shouldn't have been making with Indianapolis. And it could just be him trying to shake off some things he was struggling with in the past. It kind of got imprinted on him. Maybe now he can shake it off after this game, but this game will be a little rough for him, I believe. So I'm taking Miami. Carolina, Jacksonville next. Y'all know the top story. Travis Hunter's NFL debut. Everyone's been talking about it. He's going to play receiver, and he's going to be a situational corner. So he'll be playing in certain situations on defense as of right now. For Jacksonville, on top of adding Travis Hunter, the receiver core, they also have De'Ami Brown. And De'Ami Brown, who was very good last year, showed a lot of promise. I believe he was with, I can't remember who he was with right now, because the minute I think of De'Ami Brown, I think of Noah Brown. I get the two confused because of the last name, but I know De'Ami had a really good year. That I do know. He was super underrated. He's got a chance to get featured here, and that would be huge for him. But the offensive line also got a retool. Robert Hainsey is the new center. The former backup and old starter for Tampa is now in Jacksonville. And they also grabbed Patrick McCarry, the former Ravens guard. He's now coming over to play right guard for them. And in summary, it's new faces on the O-line, some new weapons, and a new coaches. Liam Cohen, the former Tampa Bay offensive coordinator. Y'all know, Duval. That's all you got to know. That's all you got to know about him. But it's the same QB. It's the same QB. It's Trevor Lawrence. They'll make it work. They'll be fine. But Trevor Lawrence will still be QB, and that's where the main question lies. Can Lawrence turn a new leaf against an improved Panthers defense? I think there's a path for that. And I think he will. He can do that. So I'm not too concerned about it. But it is Carolina's defense, and Carolina has done a great job so far retooling this offseason. Carolina was able to add in a couple great guys on the defensive side, so now their pressure should be better, and their sacks and pressure rates should be higher, everything. But in this first game, it might be a little shaky. And let's start with the offensive side for that issue. Ika Mekwonu, he's not likely to play, so they're going to have to turn to Hayden Christensen to take over, or Brady Christensen, my apologies, Brady Christensen, to take over at his spot on the offensive line. So they could have already a weak point that the Jaguars could exploit. They also reshaped the D-line, like I mentioned earlier. So this is for the increased pass rush chances, something they weren't very good at last year, but the secondary was on fire, I will say that much. They added Patrick Jones II from Minnesota, who had a really good start to the year last year, kind of fizzled out. He's got a chance to build on that and actually see if he can develop a pattern of consistency. So there's a chance there. And then they also drafted the Ole Miss edge rusher, Princely Umanmielen. And if he gets to a groove, it's bad news for everybody, especially in the NFC South. So there's a lot of opportunities here for some of these new guys to make a name for themselves and help Carolina get to that next level too. So the question there is now Bryce Young. What version of Bryce Young will we see? So this game's very QB-centered. We saw in the first half Bryce Young didn't look great last year. They were ready to write him off. Second half he comes back, excellent quarterback. He played like he belonged in this league. Now we're going to see if we get that same second half version or if he reverts back towards the first half. And that's really where the question lies. They get the second half QB, they're washing Jacksonville. I'm sorry. And I think in the end it is going to be Carolina who wins this game. I trust Bryce Young to put it together. Canals is giving Young consistency at coaching, and that's what he needs. And it's going to make them better for it. Next up, we go to my squad, Tampa Bay, going into Atlanta to take on the Falcons. That story for me is Tampa is going to have to face an uphill battle against a energized Atlanta Falcons team. Now, what I mean by uphill battle for Tampa is straightforward injuries. They are banged up as could be. They're going to be without Wirfs, Chris Godwin, Christian Izien, their backup safety, and Benjamin Morrison, their draft pick, their corner from Notre Dame, who is still not ready to play it. He will not play this week. So they'll be rolling some depth issues there, and also their all-pro linemen's out and their star receivers out, which means increased target for their first-round draft pick, Emeka Egbuka, who's making his NFL debut. So he'll be working alongside Mike Evans as the two receiving options for Baker Mayfield. And I think we also have to talk about the linebacker group. There was a little bit of a change there too. Tampa's linebackers, when you think of them, you think of Levante David. You don't think of anybody else, really. There was a change, though. They ended up moving on from one of their linebackers, and in his place came up another guy. Servosha Dennis is now going to be starting in the linebacker group. I can't tell you how he looks, how good he is, because I haven't seen him really play in games. He was more of a sub guy. This is his first time actually being a starter, like a real starter to start the year. Game plan for him and everything. First time I've seen it. They also took a flyer and grabbed Hassan Reddick, who we all know from the Jets story. But, nevertheless, Hassan Reddick is going to play for the Bucs this year on his contract. He's not doing what he did in New York. And we're going to see if he can kind of turn back the clock a little bit by a few years, just so he can see if he can get those high numbers again for the sacks, the pressures. If they get anything out of him, that's a huge win for Tampa Bay in this division. So the question for Tampa becomes, can they overcome the injuries on offense to challenge Atlanta's defense through all four quarters? Not just the 2 or 3. They got to go all the way through all 4 quarters to finish the game. If they can't do that, they're going to lose this game. Let's go to Atlanta. Penix now has the opening week start. Huge thing to note. He's starting the whole year. It's not Kirk Cousins. Huge deal because we haven't really seen him in a full, there's not a full list of everything he's done. There's not a big resume for him so far in the NFL. So teams still have to kind of guess with him how to game plan. It's different. There's high hopes for Kyle Pitts now because of this, because he's got a QB, he's got a really strong arm who will be looking for his tight ends. So we could see some more featuring of Kyle Pitts this season. I know fantasy owners but I'm telling you, it's the truth. Kyle Pitts is definitely going to be considered a high-value target here alongside Drake London and Darnell Mooney. So that's something to keep an eye on too. I promise you. the rookies are also set to make a big impact on defense. The Falcons emphasized defense in this draft class, and they proved it by taking 2 edge rushers in the first round, James Pierce Jr., and then also taking Jalen Walker. Neither guy is starting, but they will definitely get chances on pass rushes. I know that for a fact. Keep an eye out on it throughout the game. They're also giving chances to Xavier Watts, the Notre Dame safety, and Billy Bowman Jr., the former Oklahoma Sooners safety. He'll be playing nickelback, and Xavier Watts will be playing as the starting safety. I believe free safety. So there's a whole new group of fresh faces in this Atlanta defense, something Tampa is not prepared for. So the question becomes, with all the new faces on the defense, how can Atlanta handle what should be a high-octane Tampa Bay offense despite the injuries? I think Atlanta can find a groove there, and they'll get the victory because of that. I think because the injuries that are there, the severity of some things, they're going to be loose in some spots. And with Wirfs being hurt, that means Baker's blind side is vulnerable. If the edge rushers can get there, it's going to be a long day for Tampa. I have Atlanta winning this game in the opener in Atlanta. Las Vegas, New England, it's coaching debuts for 2 veteran coaches here. Mike Vrabel, the former Titans coach, and Pete Carroll, the longtime coach, and I think the oldest NFL coach currently that's still active. In Vegas, it's a new team for their new quarterback, Geno Smith, the veteran who was in Seattle, had Pro Bowl years, everything. He's now a Las Vegas Raider. And there's high hopes also for their running back who they drafted, who was a runner-up for the Heisman last year, Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. They also reformed the defense. And by reforming the defense and molding it a little bit in a couple spots, they've made it now to where it's kind of going to be more of a deception for some teams. They don't know what to expect because some of the talent there are playing a little bit differently than they were previous seasons because it's a new coaching staff. Just because Carroll ran a certain defense in Seattle doesn't mean it's going to be the same one in Vegas. It could be completely different. So that's just something that New England has to game plan for. Now, what will it take? This is my question. What will it take for the Raiders to keep the Patriots from completing passes? What's it going to take? I think it's pretty simple. You have to set traps. And if you're not setting traps back there where you're showing 1 high and then dropping a cover 4, you're showing 2 high, but then you're going to cover 0 to blow things out of proportion. Like, whoa, wait, what? And then you're just sending 2 blitzers and they can't plan for it. That's what it's going to be more about. The defense has to be unpredictable to the point that Drake May, who is a second-year QB, who's a little inexperienced, this is the moment where you show that inexperience and exploit that to the best of your ability. Make him look like he doesn't belong belong as a starting quarterback. That's what you have to do. That's what you're aiming for. You got to get him flustered. And I think the Raiders could do that. I'm not sold, though. On New England's side, what's going to help the Raiders, Christian Gonzalez is out. And with him being out with his hamstring injury, that leaves a glaring hole in the corner group in the secondary. So we could see a big day from their receiving group led by Jacoby Myers. We could see something there. And Brock Bowers. How could I forget about him? Will Campbell, another guy, first-round pick, highly touted tackle prospect. He is hurt. He's going to play, but keep in mind he's not 100%. He could re-injure himself. It could get worse. Something to monitor there. Stephon Diggs is also going to play the new Patriots receiver. They finally have a big-name wide receiver one they haven't had in quite a while, probably since Edelman, I would say, and that's pretty bold for me. And then we look at the revamped secondary. They were able to get Carlton Davis to come from Detroit over to New England after having a really good year with the Lions. Now he's going to serve as their starting corner, which is amazing. They also have changed up their safety group. Del Pettis is now the starting safety over one guy who was starting last year, struggling quite a bit. He's been moved to the backup role, that being Kyle Duggar. Let's also talk about, very quickly, the question. How will the Pats' run defense look against Jeanty and the Raiders? Run defense is key here for New England. Jeanty is supposed to be a high-volume runner. He's going to get most of the touches. He's going to try and run through you. He runs like these guys like Barry, like Maurice Jones-Drew. There's a lot of really nice elements in his games that makes him super elusive and hard to tackle. If the Patriots can control the gaps, I'm pretty sure they can stop Jeanty. I think there's a way to do it. We'll have to wait and see. In the end, I have New England winning the game. I do think they can limit the gaps, but it's going to be big step-ups from the secondary that'll actually help them stop the Vegas offense in the opener. So give me New England. Let's look at Arizona and New Orleans, the last 1 o'clock game in that window. Kellen Moore's head coaching debut. I know you guys are all down on the New Orleans, but it's worth mentioning a few things. Chase Young has a calf injury. Trevor Penning has a toe injury. Both guys are out, so they're not playing in this game. Chris Rumph II is going to start in place of Chase Young, and then Dylan Raduns is going to play in place for Trevor Penning on the offensive line. So we're going to see probably some weaker elements there, something that Arizona could potentially exploit. Continuing on this topic, there is one huge positive I love about the Saints, and it's hard for me to say as a Tampa fan, but I'm going to say it, and it's very true. I like their wide receiver room. Chris Olave, I love that he's the wide receiver one, but they need support behind him. Rashid Shaheed has proven time and time again he could be a serviceable wide receiver too, and then their slot guy, they got packages designed for him to be offline. Brandon Cooks is back in New Orleans, and I get it. He's an older receiver, but there's really a chance that we could see a small resurgence from him. And if he can do that, I think the Saints offense is going to be much more dangerous than just Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave. Obviously, everybody wants to talk about the quarterback situation. They're led by Spencer Rattler, but this may not be the same Rattler you saw last year. Remember, he wasn't necessarily ready to take over. He was more of the development guy. He needed to sit and learn. He didn't really get that chance. Now that he's had this offseason, maybe he's developed some new traits. Maybe he's stepped up in certain ways. Maybe Kellen Moore's gotten some good things out of him, and maybe they've got a creative playbook that gives them some wins that nobody has written out for them. So, in the end, can the Saints offense prove the league wrong and crush the Arizona defense? That is the question in this. I'll answer that in a second. Let's look at Arizona. Will Hernandez, their guard, he's out with a knee injury, so they're going to have to make a substitution there. They've got new starters at corner. One guy who's been there, and then another guy who they drafted. The guy they promoted, Max Melton, I know he's more like a nickel guy, maybe backup last year, but he's playing as a starting corner this year on the outside. Will Johnson is playing on the opposite side of him. So those are the two corners. Really good situation there. I think both are super underrated. And they upgraded their pass rush by grabbing Josh Sweat. So they've made some small adjustments on the defensive side, but enough to be significant in the NFC West because you need to have a stronger, serviceable defense to compete, and they've done that. So I'm going to give them full credit. They did a great job. So for Arizona, how will the run game, though? How will that thrive against a very stout Saints D-line? There's one thing I do like about the Saints also. Their D-line is super good. They do a great job stopping run, controlling gaps. That's all on Cam Jordan's direction there. They do a great job on that element, and that's why it's important that James Conner and Trey Benson get the gaps established, and they got to get the run going some way, somehow. I'd probably have to bounce outside to make some plays happen. Maybe some more tosses and pitches there may help. More outside zones, anything. Whatever it takes, that's what they're going to have to do to really get by this Saints D-line. In the end, I don't think the Saints offense is going to be able to prove the league wrong here in this game. So I have Arizona winning this in New Orleans. Now we go to the 4 o'clock window. Tennessee at Denver. Tennessee, Cam Ward. It's his NFL debut. We're all going to be watching closely of how he does at Mile High. Kevin Winston Jr., one of their defensive backs, he's going to be out for this game with a hamstring injury. L'Jarius Sneed and Khalil Mullings also are questionable for this game. Mullings being the running back, Sneed being the corner. So we might have to watch those guys. They'll probably play, but worth watching their injuries. They also have a new wide receiver group to keep an eye on and monitor. Alec Manar, and Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett comes over from Seattle. They got a really good vet receiver there. Let's see what he does there. Maybe he's definitely got some juice left in the tank. And if Cam Ward is able to get really authoritative with this ball, aggressive with it, ooh, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun for Tyler. They also reshaped the front seven by adding 2 new players. They added Draymond Jones to be the inside D-line guy, and then they've added Cody Barton to the linebacker group. So you got 2 levels with 1 player new in each. So there are a little bit of differences there, maybe more for run support than coverage. So for Tennessee, will the Titans produce enough pressure that will force Bo Nix to make really bad throws? That's what we're going to ask ourselves. I don't know if they create that pressure in this game because, as we all know, Denver pays their offensive line, and they've proven time and time again they've been excellent, and there's a reason why they're getting paid big, big money at every position. Speaking of Denver, Dre Greenlaw, their new linebacker, he is out for this game with a quad injury. They've also added new running backs. They've lost Javonte Williams and everybody. Now it's J.K. Dobbins, who comes over from the Chargers, and R.J. Harvey, the rookie from UCF. Keep an eye on him. He's been a huge name for fantasy because they know what he can do as a dual threat back. He's a pass catcher. So he's kind of like a McCaffrey type. He can run well, he's super elusive, but he can catch those passes and take off. That's what you want to watch for. This guy could be a secret weapon for the Broncos this season, on top of also adding Evan Engram at tight end, by the way. So Bo Nix has got a lot of different players to play with here. Different options. He's got unlimited choices. It's great for him. So I don't really see many excuses here, and this defense is poised for another top 5 finish. Nix has just got to build on this campaign. But more on this Broncos run game with these new 2 guys, right? What is it going to look like in real game situations? Because we really haven't gotten a good glimpse of what these 2 could do. So I'm not 100% in yet on like what they're going to do, but I do know for a fact that they're going to be very dangerous in more ways than one. We just don't know how it's going to look like against tougher run defenses, because if I'm being honest with you, Tennessee's run defense is not that strong. These 2 new guys they added are going to help, Draymond Jones and Cody Barton, but I don't think they're going to be strong enough to stop this run game right now. So I have Denver winning this game over Tennessee. A bit of a rough debut for Cam, but it's hard lessons you got to learn as a rookie. So I'm going with Denver. San Francisco, Seattle's next. That is a 4:25 game. Sam Darnold is making his debut in Seattle. Something important to note, CMC is questionable with his calf injury. I know, we're all shaking, especially me, a fellow CMC fantasy owner. But he will play. He says he's good to go. He doesn't have any real setbacks, anything holding him back, so he's going to play probably full strength. They also have new wide receiver starters. Now, I know I'm going to omit a name, but that's because he's suspended, that being Brandon Ayuk. But Jawan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Those are the 3 that are going to be playing tomorrow in this game against Seattle. Those are big names to watch. Now, there's also new faces in the front 7 because they spent a lot of time there in this draft process. Mykel Williams from Georgia, he is a new edge rusher they've added. They also have promoted Kalia Davis to become a new defensive tackle starter. Same with Jordan Elliott. And then they've also grabbed Luke Gifford to play as a linebacker for them. So a lot of different changes here for San Francisco in the front 7. Hopefully enough to not only control the run game, but also to get some extra pressure there against some weaker offensive lines. That's what they're aiming for. But the question lies with the main guy that we've been talking about for quite a bit. And last year he didn't have a very good year. We've been worried about him. And that was Brock Purdy. Can he find success in the pass game when he doesn't have Brandon Ayuk? I mean, yeah, he's got George Kittle, but it's still worth asking. Kittle ain't necessarily the youngest tight end anymore. He could have a down year any year now. It's worth talking about and worth considering. So we have to watch that very carefully. But for Seattle, this is a big watch here. It's a whole new offense, guys. Whole new offense outside of the running backs. Sam Darnold's the new QB, the new star in town. They traded for Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp is now one of their wide receivers as wide receiver 2, number 1 being Jackson Smith and Jigba. So the 2 of them are going to be leading this receiver group along with their third option, a rookie receiver they drafted, Torrey Horton, out of Colorado State. A lot of great stuff coming out of camp about him, so that's going to be exciting to watch. Grace Zabel from North Dakota State. Huge name in the draft process. He got taken the first round. He's going to be their starting guard. I expect him to do a lot of good things. And Jalen Sundell is getting his chance to start at center for the Seattle Seahawks. They also, on the defensive side, added DeMarcus Lawrence from Dallas. I know, from Dallas. I didn't expect him to ever leave. They added Lawrence for extra help in the pass rush because that was something they struggled with also last year just a little bit. So this is a little boost that they need to kind of be more competitive in that aspect of the game. And I think that's staying on the defensive front here is really the only concern for Seattle for me right now besides health. Will Seattle's defense keep San Francisco from establishing the run? It's great you focus on the pass rush, but you really got to worry about San Francisco's run game, especially now that they have Brian Robinson Jr. as the backup running back. If anything happens to CMC, you're going against a power runner, a guy who could probably bulldoze his way and create his own gaps. So you really have to be careful here. I think Seattle has just enough to hold them off, and Seattle wins the game. I have that kind of locked in now at this point. I was back and forth on it, but Seattle I do have winning. Let's go to Green Bay, where I'm now confirming this to be the second game we are broadcasting on the stream on Sunday. The 4:30 game we will be covering is the Detroit Lions at the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field, the NFC North Division rivalry game. Huge game, statement game to start the year. And the big storyline we all know, Micah Parsons is playing his first game as a Green Bay Packer. Detroit. Let's look at Detroit first because they're the visitors here. They got some extra help at right guard despite the retirements they faced. Tate Ratledge from Georgia is now their new starting right guard. A huge get for them. He's an excellent star in the making. They did a good job solidifying that spot. They also added DJ Reed to fill the hole at corner that was left behind from Carlton Davis's departure. So that should be fine for them. He should serve well as long as he can stay healthy, avoid any kind of bad takes where basically he could roll up his ankle. Like, you got to be a little more cautious with that, but I think he'll be okay. And then their rookie defensive lineman that shocked the world when he picked him in the draft this year, Tyleik Williams from Ohio State. He'll be starting on the D-line alongside DJ Reader as an interior defensive lineman. So they've got guys who can control runs, and it's going to be their big job, and that's going to be the big question. Can the Lions D-line slow down Josh Jacobs? Jacobs had a monster year for the Packers last year in his first season with them. If Josh Jacobs is going to have to replicate that, he's going to punch through gaps inside. He's an inside runner. He's very good at that. If the Lions can get control of the gaps, it's going to be a big deal. That means the Packers can't establish run. Love's going to be throwing a lot more, and that's where their pass rush can thrive more, is in that element. When they're struggling and panicking and they can't get a run game going, the Lions rushers feast on that. And that's where Aiden Hutchinson comes in. So a lot of levels to the Detroit team. Green Bay side, though, you added Micah Parsons. You got a really good pass rusher. But it's still worth noting, Parsons, Jaden Reed, their receiver, Dontavian Wicks, one of their receivers, and Baron Sorrell, one of their rushers, they're all questionable to play. I expect all of them to play, but they're going to be banged up, so be prepared for that. I do know Parsons is on a limited count. They also added Matthew Golden in the draft, the first time the Packers have picked a receiver in the first round of the draft in, I believe, 20-something years. So that's a huge, huge milestone there. So they have a lot of high expectations for him, so he's going to have to be the top vertical threat for Love. And they also added Aaron Banks as an extra piece of insurance for protection, so now he's going to play left guard. They lost Kenny Clark to Dallas, and we saw what he could do in Dallas in Week 1 against Philly. What can the front seven for Green Bay do to keep both Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery from breaking free, especially near the red zone where they both thrive the most? I'm going to tell you right now, they have a very hard time stopping that. But I do think Green Bay can still win. And Green Bay's vertical threat is what's going to do it. I think there's going to be a glaring hole somewhere in that secondary for the Lions that will cost them this game, and Green Bay will get out of it by just that much. Green Bay beats Detroit in Green Bay to start the year. Let's go to Houston and the Rams here, going to L.A. Davante Adams is back in the West. Yes, you heard that right. He is back in the West. Now, for the Rams here, he's going to be replacing Cooper Kupp at receiver. That's why this is a big deal. So it's him and Puka Nacua together. It's a similar offense to last year outside of that adjustment. So outside of that adjustment is where they are. And then you look at the defensive side, they added Poona Ford, who I know it may not be a big name for some people, but he's a very good option to have in run support. He's going to be starting on the D-line. With new offensive talent in Houston, because they retooled, and we'll get to that in just a second, how can the Rams keep the team limited in the passing game? Because Stroud's looking to go vertical this year. Can the secondary meet the expectations set before them to shut down those receivers? Because Nico Collins is supposed to have a big year. And if he's going to have a big year, that means somebody on this Rams team's got to make a mistake. And I don't know if the Rams are going to be the ones to make that mistake. So they got to find a way to keep Nico Collins at bay. But let's go look deeper at Houston. I told you guys about the Nick Chubb leaving. He's now going to be the starting back in Houston while Joe Mixon is out for the first 4 games. So he's starting at running back. Houston is without Christian Kirk, one of their top receivers, with a hamstring injury. They also have a completely new O-line, knowing that Stroud's been having issues with protection lately. Arante Ursary, the rookie from Minnesota, is starting at left tackle. Laken Tomlinson, who was with the Jets last year, he's starting at left guard. Jake Andrews is getting the call at center. And then they're also having Ed Ingram take over at right guard. And at right tackle, it's the same guy they had last year. I believe that is Titus Howard. I believe that's who it is. They also added C.J. Gardner-Johnson to the secondary, so they got a really good veteran voice in there who is very good at drawing penalties, can I say. So the secondary looks great. The front 7 looks great for the Texans defense. And then you look at the offensive line, they did a great job preparing it and tooling it up so that Stroud has less to deal with. So it's all good for CJ. But for Houston, we have to really take this O-line more seriously. How will this newly formed line handle the intense power from this Rams defensive front? If y'all don't remember, Braden Fisk and Jared Verse created a lot of problems for a lot of offenses last year. And for the Rams, they hope to exploit that even more this year. But now how is this O-line going to handle that kind of pressure? This is their first real test. If the O-line can handle it, it's going to be it's going to be a very good year for the Texans. So they have to really watch that carefully. So that's one of my big things to watch. The Rams, though, I do have winning this game. I think there is a way that they can limit the passing game, and with the injuries to Christian Kirk, who's no longer going to play this game, that's going to be the huge hole that ends up being the deciding factor here, and the Rams will come out on top. Let's go to the primetime window game, which I did mention I will be covering. That is the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills, the battle of 2 AFC juggernauts. That's the storyline. Nothing else more particular you can get there. Isaiah Likely is out for this game for Baltimore. They did add DeAndre Hopkins to the receiver group this offseason, so talking Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, and DeAndre Hopkins. That's not bad. With Mark Andrews, that's a pretty sick group for Lamar. Their secondary features new starters as well, including Malachi Starks, the rookie safety from Georgia. He's starting this year for them. And they also acquired former All-Pro corner Jair Alexander. So that's a huge add for them. He'll be getting some starting opportunities tomorrow night. Now, we all know Lamar's an MVP. This is 2 MVP quarterbacks here, 2 legends of the game already. But against the Bills offense, that can hurt you in many ways. We're talking about the defense here. Can the Ravens defense limit the amount of explosive plays from Josh Allen and James Cook? James Cook just got a massive contract. We know how lethal that run game can be in more ways than one. They can beat you on the ground, or they can use the running backs out of the backfield to burn you in the short game. And if that's the case, you really got to make sure that you're in a lot of nickel packages to pick that up, because you're going to need a defensive back. You don't need the extra linebackers for that because they're going to be an open field. You need the DBs. Get the DBs in there. That's what's going to take to have to stop those kind of plays. And they got to pick it up early. If they pick it up early, I think they can get Buffalo out here. Speaking of Buffalo, Tre'Davious White back with Buffalo. Unlikely to play due to injury. Same thing goes for Tyler Bass, their kicker. He's out. So they just called the legend himself, the former longest field goal in NFL history record holder, Matt Prater from the practice squad. He's going to be playing now and kicking tomorrow night. So that's a huge deal. Some small changes as well to the roster for Buffalo. So it's mostly the same group starting, but Joey Bosa is now playing as a defensive end with Gregory Rousseau. So that's the biggest change of them all. Shaq Thompson's now at linebacker as well. They get him from Carolina. And because Tre'Davious White's hurt, this is the debut of a rookie corner, I believe from Iowa State, Dorian Strong. And we're going to see how he does. I've heard he's been very good at training camp. We're going to see how he performs against a team like Baltimore with so many different ways they can beat you. Now, with this defense, what's it going to take for the Bills to keep Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry to a quiet night? I think it's pretty simple. You got to make sure that you've always got 7 or 8 guys in that box at all times. You have to have 7 or 8 guys in the box, or even guarding the outsides if you have to. Do not let them run. You cannot let them bounce outside because Henry will hurt you there. You also cannot let Lamar get out of the pocket. He gets out of the pocket, you have to have that second level lockdown, ready to blow by the blocks and grab him with short yardage. That's what you have to do as a defense. You have to have that constantly planned. If you got to let your secondary do their work with 4 DBs by themselves, do it. Make Lamar beat you in the air. That's what they have to do. And I think Buffalo will come out on top here, but it's going to be a super contested game. And finally, before we reach the 1 hour mark on this video, which will be split into chapters, by the way, so if you haven't already, just skip straight to the part where your teams are playing if you're the most interested in that. Minnesota, Chicago, Monday Night Football. It's a new dawn in Chicago. That's the storyline. Ben Johnson takes over as head coach. It's his debut as a head coach in the NFL. They got new talent as well. Luther Burden III at receiver. Colston Loveland at tight end. A new O-line, led by Joe Thuney, the former Super Bowl winning offensive lineman from the Kansas City Chiefs who protected Mahomes for years. The all-pro guy. Jonah Jackson playing the opposite of him. And Drew Dahlman, the longtime Falcons center, he is now a Chicago Bear. So the Bears have done a very good job solidifying this offensive line to put Caleb in the best situation possible. TJ Edwards is doubtful for this game against Minnesota. So I could see them running more nickel packages because behind TJ Edwards, they did have a backup at middle linebacker, but they don't have a true Mike because that backup is hurt. He's on IR. So they're going to have to do some makeshift things, move some guy around, maybe play more nickel packages, play with the extra defensive back rather than 3 linebackers. So they'll run with 2 rather than 3. In their first major test here against Minnesota, can the Bears create enough headaches to open the season 1-0? And that's talking both sides. Can they suffocate the run? Can they keep Jefferson at bay? Can they find a way to break by some of these really strong Minnesota defenders and get a win here at Soldier Field? It would be excellent. And if that really is the question, I'm not sold on it. Let's talk about Minnesota. McCarthy makes his NFL debut at QB. Second-year QB. Supposed to start last year. He got hurt. Missed the whole year. Sam Darnold happened. Now he's the starting QB in Minnesota. It's his second year, but it's really like his rookie year. So we're going to see what he brings to the table. I've heard some good things, some bad things. It's been a mixed review for the most part. But Harrison Smith, the longtime Viking safety, he is doubtful to play with an illness, so they're going to have to make a substitution there. Jay Ward will get the start. Also, Adam Thielen is back with the Vikings, guys. He got traded back. Good for him. I'm very happy for him and his family. They also got a new offensive line now. Will Fries is now at right guard, the former Colt. Ryan Kelly, another former Colt. He's going to be the new center. And Donovan Jackson, who they drafted from Ohio State, he is their new left guard. So they've reshaped this O-line to make sure McCarthy doesn't get hurt like that again. Anything it takes to make sure he's protected. And the D-line, let's go to the defensive side. They added Jonathan Allen, which is a huge get from Washington. And then they also added Javon Hargrave, who was the former 49er guy. So this is, again, a really good grab here, more focused on run and pass rush. They're more balanced on the approach here of what they needed to fix. So just anything that kind of plugs and fixes where the gaps were, and it's very good fills. And at corner, they added Super Bowl winning corner from this past season, Isaiah Rodgers. He'll be starting for them. So they've found a way to address every single gap in their defense where they've lost a player, which is very good. And we have to ask ourselves, is Minnesota in the position to really win now? Can they repeat what they did last year? But the real question is, the one just for this game, with all the new faces on offense, can McCarthy pull out a win against a difficult Bears defense? Straightforward, that's what it is. Is he capable of taking down one of the toughest defenses in the league, especially in the NFC North, in Chicago? I think he's going to surprise a lot of people and do it. Minnesota will beat Chicago at Soldier Field on Monday night. That is my call. That is my final prediction. That is my final storyline. Last thing you need to know about this game, right? About this week. Enjoy it. Have fun. Don't take it too seriously. It's the first game of the season. It doesn't mean your season's over. It's a long season to go. Remember, teams who are 4-0 in the first 4 weeks, there are teams who go 4-0 and don't make the playoffs. There are teams who start 1-3, 2-2 that make the playoffs, could win their divisions, could win the Super Bowl. So don't let these first few weeks fool you. Don't let them get you down. Just stay focused on the next game after that. Stay focused. Just watch them for fun and enjoy the time because we got football back, and that's all that matters.